Hey everyone, and welcome to my Assassination Rogue PvP guide for patch 8.1. In this guide, we'll have a look at what has changed for rogues, then we'll go over stat priority, talents, honor talents, and Azerite traits. Finally, we'll talk a bit about what you have to do in an arena as a rogue, and for this we'll talk a bit about 2 versus 2 and a bit about 3 versus 3. Keep in mind that we are still very early in patch 8.1, we do not even have the new Azerite gear with an additional ring yet, and class balancing is very likely to happen before the next PvP season, so what I'm saying here is subject to change. Alright, so what has changed for Assassination Rogues with patch 8.1? The first and the most important change is the fact that Deadly Brew was removed. Deadly Brew was that honor talent that allowed us to have our deadly poison apply a minor wound poison effect on our targets. Because this has been removed, we now have to choose between the damage of deadly poison and the healing reduction effect of wound poison. The honor talent Shiv has also been changed. It now costs 35 energy instead of 0 and applies all 3 poisons to the target, regardless of the poisons you have active. So if you use Shiv on a target, you will always apply deadly poison for 12 seconds, wound poison for 8 seconds, and crippling poison for 8 seconds. The issue with this talent is that it has a 12 seconds cooldown, which means, because it applies wound poison for 8 seconds, that you will not be able to have 100% uptime with your healing reduction effect on your kill target. Also, the poisons can be dispelled by 3 healers in the game and by several DPS. So if they dispel the poison on your kill target when you use Shiv, you lose all your healing reduction. And the last reason why I do not really like this change is that you cannot be applying your healing reduction effect on several targets at once. This was what was making us exceptionally powerful in PvP. We were able to apply our healing reduction effect on the entire enemy team, making any damage hard to heal. Now this will not be the case if you are not playing wound poison and if you are playing deadly poison with Shiv. So my advice is to play wound poison instead of deadly poison, so you will lose the damage of deadly poison, but you will gain a stronger healing reduction effect than you had before. After this, we have the honor talent System Shock that was nerfed a bit. It now deals a bit less damage, but it is still one of our best honor talents, so you will be using it anyways. The honor talent Flying Daggers was not changed at all. It is in the patch notes because they changed the tooltip, but that is all. The talent Blindside was a bit buffed. It is now usable on any target below 35% health instead of 30%. This buff is very weak and will not be enough to make the talent any useful in PvP, especially since the 2 other talents on the row are really strong. Aside from all this, we have 3 Azerite traits that were removed: Fan of Blades, Poisoned Wire, and Sharpened Blades. These traits were not really good in PvP and were not really used in PvP, so this change does not hurt us too much. And we got 3 new Azerite traits instead. The first one is Echoing Blade. It is a trait that buffs your Fan of Knives damage, so it is not a trait that you want to use in PvP. It is more of a PvE trait for Mythic Dungeons or whatever. The 2 other traits are Lying in Wait and Nothing Personal. Lying in Wait is a defensive trait that heals you when you're away from the enemy. So this trait can be very useful if you're playing something like Rogue Mage. Every time you'll be kiting away from the enemy team, you will be healed, and if you cannot sit down and eat because you are chased down, you will be able to get health by running only. So this can save your life, and this can make you win some games when you're playing Rogue Mage or something very similar. The last trait, Nothing Personal, makes your Vendetta apply a poison to the target. So Vendetta will apply a damage over time effect on your target that lasts for as long as Vendetta lasts, and you will also get energy from it. So this trait, well, some people say it will be good, some people say it will be bad. I think it will be a good trait, but only when we get the 8.1 gear. Right now, with the 8.0 gear, it is a very bad trait, because if you want to use it, it means that you sacrifice a Battlefield Precision or a Shrouded Suffocation, and these traits are simply better. On the other hand, when we'll have the 8.1 gear, we'll only be able to have 3 Battlefield Precisions, and will be having 6 traits on the outer rings, so it leaves 2 spots for nothing personal, and I think it will be a good trait then, because the energy regeneration during Vendetta will allow you to deal a bit more damage, and the dot can actually be very useful if your target is going away with Vendetta and has all your dots. This dot will mean additional damage, and so the target will be in danger. About stat priority, the stat priority is still the same as it was in 8.0.1. So that means you want to stack agility first, of course, then you want haste, mastery, critical strike, and versatility. The reason behind this is that haste increases your passive energy regeneration. It also increases your auto attack speed, and auto attacks deal a lot of damage on top of applying poisons. And last, haste makes your bleed tick faster. So if your bleed ticks faster, you deal more damage, and you also get more energy thanks to venomous wounds. And if you have more energy, you will be able to deal more damage. Mastery is your second best stat. It increases all nature damage and bleed damage by a flat amount. So it increases your the damage of everything you have except auto attacks and mutilate. Critical strike is your third best stat. It is a really good stat because it gives you more combo points through Seal Fate, and it also means more damage. But because in PvP crits are only 50% more damage instead of 100% more damage, Mastery will be better than Critical Strike. And the last stat is Versatility. Well, this is not a bad stat, but as it is, all the others are better. So you don't want Versatility at all. You want Haste, Mastery, or Critical Strike, and you will almost always be able to have 2 of the 3 before you have a piece of gear with Versatility. Alright, so we can now talk about Talents. On the first row, I think Master Poisoner is your best option. The damage increase to poison is not what's interesting you, but you need the increased non-damaging effects. It increases the power of your slow, which is nice, but the real strength of this talent is that it increases the healing reduction effect of wound poison by 5 additional %. So wound poison becomes a 30% healing reduction effect, and this is insane. This is what's making your Assassination Rogue a real threat in the arena, because the enemy healers will struggle to heal your damage. Elaborate planning can still be played if you're playing something very bursty, like Rogue Mage, but I think Master Poisoner now wins most of the times because of wound poison. Blindside is a terrible talent and you will not use it. On the second row, your only option is Subterfuge. This talent is incredibly strong as it allows you to cast several garrotes or several cheap shots when you exit stealth. So every time you start a game, you will be able to crowd control the entire enemy team all by yourself, which will give time to your team to come and have follow-up CC. And if you have to vanish in the middle of the game, you can stun the entire enemy team, so you can save your teammates or yourself, or you can get kills which you would not have gotten without Subterfuge. On the third row, you can choose between 2 great options, Mark for Death and Vigor. Both talents are pretty competitive right now, so you may pick whatever you prefer. Mark for Death is a bit more burst oriented, whereas Vigor helps with the sustained damage. I personally have started to play Vigor a bit more, because since we lost Deadly Poison and since we're using Master Poisoner more than Elaborate Planning, I feel like we lost damage, so the burst isn't quite as powerful as it was in 8.0, so Vigor makes a bit more sense, since it is really good to have sustained damage that the enemy healer will struggle to heal because of wound poison. On the fourth row, you only have one real option, Elusiveness. This talent is incredible as it reduces all damage taken when you use Feint for 5 seconds. And Feint only has a 15-second cooldown, so that means you will have that 30% damage reduction whenever the enemy is trying to burst you down. If you learn how to predict when the enemy is going to go for you, when you're going to get stunned, and you can use Feint just before that, you will be a lot more tankier. I really believe you cannot play Rogue competitively without this talent. If you are really new to Rogue, you may play Cheat Death while you're learning the rest of the class, that way you will not have to worry about using Feint, but if you want to be competitive, at some point you will have to swap for Elusiveness and learn how to use it. On the fifth row, you want to pick Internal Bleeding. This talent makes your kidney shot apply a bleed on the target. That bleed deals okay damage and also helps regenerate your energy because it works with venomous wounds. The other talents on the row are not amazing. Iron Wire is pretty bad, and Prey on the Weak has been nerfed in PvP and is only a 5% damage increase in PvP instead of 10%. This makes internal bleeding a stronger option. On the 6th row you want to pick Toxic Blade. This is a very strong ability that hits quite hard and that increases all nature damage you deal to your target by 20% in PvP for 9 seconds. It means it increases your poison damage, your poison bomb damage, your envenom damage, and even your Azerite trait damage if you have Azerite traits that deal nature damage, such as Heed My Call. Also, the ability only has a 25-second cooldown, so you will have it every time you kidney shot your target. Every 25 seconds you can kidney shot, Toxic Blade, and then use envenoms for 20% more damage. This is very powerful and will help you kill targets. The other talents on the row are not very good anyways. Venom Rush is pretty bad in PvP, and Exsanguinate is not exactly shining. It's a weird talent. It makes your bleed stick faster, but well, at the end of it you have to reapply your bleed, so it's a talent that makes you want to burst your target because you have more bleed damage, but at the end of it you cannot use Envenom, you have to use Rupture or you will lose damage. So it's a bit clunky and no one really uses it. On the 7th row you will pick Poison Bomb. It is a passive damage increase. Your Envenoms and Ruptures have a chance to trigger a Poison Bomb, which deals a good amount of damage to the target. And the other two talents on the row are terrible for PvP anyways, so you have to pick Poison Bomb. About Hunter talents, well, if you're a human you can play Relentless, because you have a way to break out of stuns with your racial. But if you're not a human, you will always pick Gladiator's Medallion. As a rogue, you're very squishy, you're very vulnerable to stuns, so you need to have a way to break out of stuns or you will be killed. If you play Adaptation, the enemy team can just trigger it and then kill you. If you play Relentless and are not a human, the enemy team can just stun you for 4 seconds or 5 seconds and you will die. So you need Gladiator's Medallion in order to stay alive. Since Deadly Brew was removed, we now have room for an additional Hunter talent. If you are playing Wind Poison, which I think is best, you will be able to play Smoke Bomb, Crippling Venom and System Shock because you have healing reduction effect on your weapons. On the other hand, if you are playing Deadly Poison, you will no longer have this healing reduction effect. Healing reduction effects are very strong in PvP, and the fact that we have one as Assassination Rogues is what's making us so good in PvP. So you cannot afford not to have it. Because of this, if you're playing Deadly Poison, you will have to play Shiv as well. That leaves you with 2 other Hunter talents. These will be Crippling Venom and System Shock, or Mind Numbing Poison and System Shock in 2 vs 2, and Smoke Bomb and System Shock in 3 vs 3. As Assassination Rogues, the rest of our Hunter talents is not really amazing. There isn't any talent that will be really better in a specific situation. The only thing I can think of is that if you are having trouble catching a specific class, you might want to try either Maneuverability or Death from Above in order to catch them, but aside from this, you will be playing Smoke Bomb, Crippling Venom, System Shock or Shiv depending on the poison you use. Now let's talk about Azerite traits. When it comes to Azerite traits, the most important thing is one-shot justification. The 2 additional combo points you get out of your road are very important. The best trait you can have aside from this is Battlefield Precision or Battlefield Focus if you're a Horde player. This trait deals an insane amount of damage. After this, Nothing Personal is a good trait, Scent of Blood is a good trait, and if you can't have these, Double Dose and Twist the Knife are okay. They are not as good as the ones I mentioned before, but they are okay. Right now we're still in 8.0, so we have the 8.0 gear, which means the best setup is 1-shot justification and 2 Battlefield Precisions. When we will have the 8.1 gear, we will have an additional Azerite ring. Because of this, the new best setup will be 3 Battlefield Precisions, 1-shot justification, and 2 Nothing Personal or 2 Scent of Blood. It might not be possible to get that, so when you have your new Azerite gear, keep in mind that first you have to get 1-shot justification, then you have to get as many Battlefield Precisions as you can, and then you have to get Nothing Personal or Scent of Blood on your remaining traits. If it is not possible, just settle for the best traits you have. For the neutral offensive ring, you want to play either Heed My Call or Overwhelming Power. These traits are the best you can have. Overwhelming Power gives you a lot of haste, which is very beneficial for your damage as Assassination Rogue, and Heed My Call hits very hard, and it hits with nature damage, which is buffed by Toxic Blade. If you do not have these traits, Gut Ripper is still very good as well. It deals a good amount of damage, and if you do not have Gut Ripper, Heed My Call, or Overwhelming Power, you might want to get a better Azerite gear because the other traits are really not as good. For the defensive ring, you want to have either Resounding Protection, Impassive Visage, or Shrouded Mental. Maybe Lying in Wait will be good, as I said earlier, but we still need to test it. Well, at least I still need to test it. Shrouded Mental is really good depending on what you play against. If you're playing against casters, it is amazing. And other than that, Resounding Protection and Impassive Visage will provide you with passive healing, which might help your healer and might keep you alive. Alright, now that your character is battle ready, let's talk a bit about what you have to do when you're in an arena. We'll talk a bit about 2 versus 2 and we'll talk a bit about 3 versus 3. Alright, so if you're playing 2 versus 2 as an Assassination Rogue, you are most likely playing with a healer or with a mage. If you're playing Rogue Mage, well, the most important thing you have to remember is that you do not have any healer on your team. So that means you cannot afford to take damage. If you start taking damage, you lose all the time. So you'll try to kill your targets when the kill target is in a stun and the other target is in a polymorph or in a blind or whatever. But if you see that you are not going to kill your target when the CC chains end, you go away, even if your kill target is at 1% health. You do not stay and try to finish off your targets. If you do this, the enemy healer will save the kill target. The enemy team will use their cooldowns, so they will not die, and you will take a lot of damage. You will maybe have to trinket. If you trinket, it means you die next turn. So whenever you see that the target is not going to die during the CC chain, you go away. If you do this as Rogue Mage, you should be fine. The comp has amazing damage. If you learn to time your kidney shots when the mage has some polymorphs, you will be doing really great. You will force enemy cooldowns, and at some point, if you manage to stay alive by retreating, you will be winning the game. Now, if you play with a healer, it is a bit different. You have to know that in 2 versus 2, when the doors open, there is 20% dampening. As an Assassination Rogue, you have a 30% healing reduction effect with your Wound Poison and Master Poisoner. It means that when the doors open, if you poison your targets, they have a 45% healing reduction. This is huge and you have to use it. So in 2 versus 2, what you want to do is sab the healer when the game starts and attack the DPS. If your healer can get follow-up CC after the sap, it is great. Anyways, after the CC fades on the enemy healer, you can attack him. The reasoning behind this is that the enemy DPS will have taken a lot of damage from your opener, and because there is your poison and there is dampening, it will be hard for the enemy healer to get him to full health. So you can attack the enemy healer during this, because the enemy healer will be too busy healing his teammate to heal himself as well. So you can really have some pressure in the early game, and if you have that pressure, you can keep it, because the enemy team will have to play a bit defensively, and because of this, you will be able to play a bit offensively. Your healer will be able to play offensively. If you're playing with a Disciplined Priest, you will be able to deal damage. If you're playing with a Druid, he will be able to Cyclone without healing you, will be able to deal damage in cut form, etc. So later in the game, what you want to do is try to dot both targets. If you can have bleeds on both targets, it is very good, because if you can keep your Wound Poison applied on both targets as well, they will have a very hard time healing through the damage. And at some point, the healer will not be able to heal both himself and his teammate more than you do damage. And when that moment happens, you will slowly be winning the game. Every time you will be able to have a kidney shot on someone and deal heavy damage, or any CC on the healer and heavy damage, because of your poisons, because of your healing reduction effect and dampening. After the CC, the healer will struggle to get his teammate or himself back up, and every time you have a setup like this, his health will go up, but a bit less each time, until eventually you kill him. Okay, so if you're playing 3 versus 3, things are a bit different. First, if you're used to playing 2 versus 2, you have to be aware that there is no dampening when the 3 versus 3 game starts. This changes a lot of things because it means enemy healing will be increased and friendly healing will be increased as well. The second thing to keep in mind is that there is a third player to account for in 3 versus 3. So you have to be aware of 3 players' castings and whereabouts and cooldowns, so it is harder. Also, when you have a kill attempt, so maybe you can kidney shot your kill target, you're playing with a mage and with a priest, and the mage can polymorph the enemy healer, you have to be aware that there is a third DPS in the enemy team and that this person will try to stop your kill attempt. So when you try to kill a target, you have to make sure that the third person will either be in CC as well, or will not be able to disrupt your kill attempt, or you will not kill anyone. Now, if you're a rogue and you're playing in a comp that relies on sustained damage, the best thing you can do is apply wound poison on all targets. So for example, if you're playing Shadow Priest, Assassination Rogue and Resto Shaman, what you want to do is apply your dots on all targets and make sure your wound poison remains applied to all targets. The Shadow Priest will most likely dot every target as well, so every target in the game will have several damage over time effects. Will deal high damage, will have a 30% healing reduction effect on them, and because of this, all the enemies' health bars will be dropping a bit, and you can seize the opportunities that give you to clean shot someone and try to kill him while the Shadow Priest is stunning the healer and silencing the healer. So what you have to remember is that if you are playing a comp that relies on sustained damage, your best asset is wound poison. It is very important to have it active on all targets so they cannot heal easily and you have an easier time choosing a target you can kill. Now, if you're playing a comp that relies a bit more on burst damage, such as Rogue Hunter or Rogue Mage, it is very important to master your CC chains and to do them at the right time. That means you cannot just fail your CC chains. You have to kidney shot your kill target when the mage is sheeping the healer. Not before, not after. You have to do that at the same time to force cooldowns and to get kills. If you kidney shot when the enemy healer is not in CC, the damage you deal on the DPS will be healed. If you polymorph the enemy healer when the enemy DPS is not in CC, the DPS will use CDs, it will run away, he will stun you. So it is very important to get some coordination with your teammates and CC at the same time. Also, when you're playing such a comp, as I said before, you have to make sure that the third person in the enemy team will not be able to disrupt you too much, because if this person is allowed to do this, then again, you will not kill anyone. Also, it is very important to have in mind that you have damage as Rogue Mage, for example, or as Rogue Hunter, but you do not have insane damage and insane survivability like some classes do, so you will not win if you just do damage. It is very important to get the CC game up, and if you're trying to play the damage race against a comp that features a warrior or a demon hunter, you will most likely lose. So your CCs are very important and you have to be very careful about how you use them. Also, when you're playing with a hunter or with a mage and you want to kidney shot the DPS and polymorph the healer or trap the healer, you have to do it when you have damage. You cannot just do it like this randomly with VRNG, no dots, no toxic blade, because if you do this, the healer will be in CC, the DPS will be in CC, okay, all good, but you will not have any damage on the DPS, so during those 6 seconds, he will not take a lot of damage, he will not die, and he will not be in danger, and because there is no dampening, the enemy healer will top him after the CC chain ends. So, when you want to kill a target, while playing a burst comp, you have to ask your teammates or to know whether they have damage or not. That way, when you are able to kidney shot the DPS and polymorph the healer, you will have toxic blade, you will have dots, you will have energy, you will be able to destroy the enemy DPS, and ideally your teammate will have damage as well. So a mage will have Ray of Frost, he will have Ice Nova, a hunter will have his offensive cooldowns, he will have stacks of Moongoose Bite or whatever. it is important to CC when you have damage. And well, these Rogue Mage Priest, Rogue Assassin, Shadow Priest, Rescue Shaman, and Rogue Hunter Healer are about the only comps I have really played right now. So these are the only ones I can give you advice on. But as a general rule, I think there are two kind of comps: the comps that rely on burst damage, and the comps that rely on sustained damage. So if you're playing a comp that relies on sustained damage, wound poison, dots, and you see the opportunities you have. If you're playing a comp that relies on burst damage, you wait until you can CC at the proper time, and you CC a lot, and when you do it, you make sure that the third person in the enemy team cannot stop you from doing damage. If you do this, well, there is no reason why you shouldn't win games. Well, that's it for today, so I think this guide is coming to an end. Because I'd like to know whether what I did was good or bad, please leave a like or a dislike if you liked or disliked the video. If you did not like it, please tell me why if you can, because it will help me do better videos next time. And well, thanks for watching and see you next time.
Goodbye.